The stars looked different from this part of the galaxy. Jake Morrison stood near the observation window of the Starward Hope and watched the purple and blue lights of distant nebulas. He had been in space for 3 years now, but he had never seen anything like the Valkyrie homeworld that slowly grew larger in the window. The planet was massive. It had rings of silver ice around it and 3 moons that glowed with soft green light. Cities covered the surface like spiderwebs made of crystal and metal. The Valkyrie had been building their civilization for 10,000 years. Humans had only left Earth 200 years ago. Jake was just a lieutenant. He was 32 years old, with brown hair and tired eyes. He was not a diplomat or a scientist. He was simply part of the security team for this mission. His job was to stand in the background and look professional while the important people talked. Captain Linda Hayes called all crew members to the briefing room. She was a tall woman with gray hair and a calm voice that could make anyone feel safe. She had led the Starward Hope through 3 successful first contact missions already. "Listen carefully," she said to the gathered crew. "The Valkyrie are not like any species we have met before. They are insectoid. They have hard shells, multiple limbs, and compound eyes. Do not stare. Do not show fear. They can smell fear, and they see it as weakness." Amy Torres, the ship's medic, raised her hand. She was young, maybe 28, with dark, curly hair and a quick smile. "Captain, what do we know about their culture?" "They value strength and power," the captain replied. "Their society is built on hierarchy. The strong lead, and the weak follow. Their queen, Zithra Ven, has ruled for over 300 years. She is considered the most powerful Valkyrie in history." Commander Ryan Brooks stepped forward. He was Jake's direct superior, a serious man who rarely smiled. "One more thing. The Valkyrie do not understand human emotions. They find our concepts of friendship, love, and sacrifice to be confusing. To them, every action must have a logical purpose. They do not do things just because it feels right." Jake listened quietly. He did not understand why anyone would live that way. To him, doing the right thing was reason enough. But he kept his thoughts to himself. The Starward Hope landed on a platform made of black stone. Jake stepped out with the rest of the security team and felt the alien air fill his lungs. It was thicker than Earth air and smelled like copper and flowers. The sky was a deep orange color, and the sun was much larger than the sun back home. Hundreds of Valkyrie waited for them. They stood on 6 legs, their bodies covered in dark blue shells that shimmered in the light. Their heads were triangular, with huge compound eyes that reflected everything like broken mirrors. They made clicking sounds as they communicated with each other. Jake tried not to stare, but it was hard. These creatures were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. A path opened through the crowd, and a group of royal guards approached. They were bigger than the others, with golden markings on their shells and long spears that crackled with energy. Behind them came a transport platform that floated above the ground. On the platform sat Queen Zithra Ven. She was larger than any Valkyrie Jake had seen. Her shell was deep purple, with patterns of silver that looked like stars. Her eyes were the color of molten gold, and they moved slowly across the human visitors. When her gaze passed over Jake, he felt a chill run down his spine. There was intelligence in those eyes. Ancient, cold, calculating intelligence. Captain Hayes stepped forward and bowed. "Your Majesty, on behalf of Earth and all of humanity, we thank you for this opportunity to meet." The Queen made a series of clicks and hisses. A small device on her chest translated her words into English. "Humans, you are young. Your species has existed for a mere moment in the life of the galaxy, yet you have traveled far to stand before us. This is either courage or foolishness. We shall see which." The humans were led into the royal palace. It was enormous, with ceilings so high they disappeared into shadow. Crystals hung everywhere, filling the space with soft rainbow light. Thousands of Velkari watched from balconies and walkways above. Jake stayed close to Amy as they walked. "This place is incredible," she whispered. "It's overwhelming," Jake replied. "I feel like an ant walking into a cathedral." The welcoming ceremony began in the grand chamber. It was a circular room with the Queen's throne at the center, raised on a platform of white stone. The human delegation stood on one side, and hundreds of Velkari nobles filled the rest of the space. Captain Hayes began her speech about peace and cooperation between species. Jake only half listened. His eyes moved around the room, checking exits and watching the crowd. It was habit. Security training had made him paranoid. That paranoia saved lives. He saw it before anyone else. A group of Velkari near the back of the chamber were moving differently than the others. Their body language was tense, aggressive. They were reaching for something hidden beneath their shells. "Get down!" Jake shouted. The first explosion tore through the chamber before his words finished echoing. Fire and smoke filled the air. The ground shook so hard that Jake fell to his knees. Screams mixed with the sound of plasma weapons firing. Through the chaos, Jake saw the Queen's platform collapse. A massive piece of the ceiling had fallen directly on it. Royal guards lay dead or dying around it. And beneath the rubble, trapped and unable to move, was Queen Zithraven herself. Assassins were moving toward her. They were coming to finish what they had started. Jake did not think. He did not calculate the odds or consider the danger. He simply ran toward the Queen while everyone else ran away. Jake ran through fire and falling debris. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of burning metal. His lungs hurt with every breath, but he did not stop. His eyes stayed fixed on the collapsed platform where Queen Zithraven lay trapped. Behind him, he could hear Commander Brooks shouting his name. Jake ignored him. Orders did not matter right now. A person was in danger, and he could help. That was all that mattered. He reached the Queen's position and dropped to his knees beside her. The massive stone pillar had fallen across her lower body, pinning her to the ground. Her golden eyes looked up at him with an expression he could not read. Surprise, maybe. Or confusion. "Human," she said through her translator. "What are you doing?" "Saving you," Jake replied. He grabbed the edge of the pillar and pulled. It did not move. It was too heavy. He would need help. The assassins were getting closer. Jake counted 5 of them, moving through the smoke like shadows. They carried plasma rifles and blades that glowed with blue energy. Their shells were painted with red symbols that Jake did not recognize. He pulled out his sidearm. It was a standard military pistol, designed for human threats. He had no idea if it would work against Velkari shells. The first assassin came into clear view. Jake fired 3 shots. 2 bounced off the creature's shell, but the third found a gap near the neck. The assassin fell. The others scattered, taking cover behind fallen pillars and broken furniture. They began firing back. Plasma bolts flew past Jake's head, close enough that he could feel the heat on his skin. He positioned himself between the Queen and the attackers. His body became her shield. He knew this was crazy. He knew he would probably die. But the thought of running away never entered his mind. "Why?" the Queen asked. Her voice was weak. She was hurt worse than Jake had realized. "Why do you protect me? I am not your queen. I am not even your species." Jake fired another shot, forcing an assassin back into cover. "Because you need help. Because it's the right thing to do." 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020 2020. "That is not logical," Zithraven said. "No," Jake agreed. "It's not." A plasma bolt hit his left shoulder. The pain was incredible, like someone had pressed a hot iron into his flesh. He screamed but kept his position. He kept firing. Another bolt hit his back. then another. Each one burned through his uniform and into his skin. The world started to spin. His vision went dark at the edges. Through the chaos, he heard a familiar voice. Amy Torres had followed him. She slid into position beside him, her medical kit in one hand and a pistol in the other. "You idiot," she said, already pulling out bandages. "You absolute idiot. Nice to see you too," Jake managed to say. Amy began treating his wounds while Jake continued to fire at the assassins. She worked fast, her hands steady despite the danger. She had trained for situations like this. But training was different from reality. Reality was louder, messier, and more terrifying. "There are too many of them," Amy said. "We need to hold them off until help arrives." Jake nodded. His arms were getting heavy. The pistol felt like it weighed 100 pounds. But he kept firing. He kept fighting. The assassins tried to rush them twice. Both times, Jake and Amy drove them back. But each attack took more out of them. Jake was losing blood. His shots were getting slower, less accurate. "Human," the Queen said. "You are dying." "Not yet," Jake replied. Queen Zithra Ven watched him with those strange golden eyes. In her 300 years of life, she had seen countless acts of violence, betrayal, and cruelty. She had seen warriors fight for glory and soldiers fight for pay. This human was dying for her, a creature he had met only hours ago, a being from a species his people knew nothing about. There was no reward waiting for him, no glory, no logical reason for his actions, and yet he fought on. The Queen had studied humans before this mission. She had read reports about their history, their culture, their strange beliefs. But nothing in those reports had prepared her for this. Nothing had explained how a species could evolve to value the lives of others more than their own. It was inefficient. It was illogical. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Finally, after what felt like hours, the sound of reinforcements echoed through the chamber. Velkari royal guards poured in from every entrance. Their weapons blazing, the assassins tried to flee, but they were surrounded. Jake watched the battle end through blurry eyes. His body had given everything it had. There was nothing left. "It's over," Amy said, pressing a bandage against the worst of his wounds. "Jake, stay with me. Stay awake." He tried to respond, but the words would not come. The world tilted sideways, and he felt himself falling. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was Queen Zithraven's face, her golden eyes fixed on him with an expression that looked almost like wonder. When the guards finally lifted the pillar from the Queen's body, she did not immediately call for her own medical treatment. Instead, she pointed at the unconscious human lying in a pool of his own blood. "Save him first," she commanded. "Use everything we have. This creature must not die." Her advisors looked at each other in confusion. Why would the Queen care so much about one human? But they did not question her. They never questioned her. As Jake was carried away on a medical platform, the Queen spoke softly, more to herself than to anyone else. "This creature chose pain. He chose possible death. For me, for a stranger. She had lived for 300 years. She had conquered enemies and built an empire. But in all that time, she had never witnessed true courage. Until today." Jake opened his eyes slowly. The light was soft and blue, coming from crystals embedded in the ceiling above him. He was lying on something that felt like a cloud, warm and perfectly shaped to his body. The pain he remembered was gone, replaced by a strange tingling sensation across his skin. He tried to sit up, but a gentle hand pushed him back down. "Easy there, hero." It was Amy. She sat beside his bed, looking tired but relieved. "You've been unconscious for 3 days. Your body needs rest." 3 days? Jake looked around the room. It was clearly not human. The walls curved in ways that did not make sense. And strange machines floated in the air around him. making soft humming sounds. Where am I? Where am I? A Velkari medical facility, the best one on the planet, apparently. Amy smiled, but there was worry in her eyes. Jake, you almost died. You took 4 plasma burns. Any one of them could have killed you. The only reason you're alive is because of their technology. Jake touched his shoulder where he remembered being hit. The skin was smooth and unmarked. Not even a scar remained. Their medicine is incredible, Amy continued. Centuries ahead of ours. They regrew damaged tissue, repaired your nervous system, fixed things we didn't even know were broken. She paused. They really wanted you to survive. Before Jake could ask what she meant, the door opened. Commander Brooks walked in, his face a mixture of anger and respect. Morrison, he said, you disobeyed a direct order. You ran into an active combat zone without backup. You nearly got yourself killed. 2. Yes, sir, Jake replied quietly. Brooks stared at him for a long moment. Then his expression softened. You also saved the Queen's life and prevented a diplomatic disaster that could have led to war. The Velkari government is calling you a hero. Every news channel on this planet is showing footage of what you did. Jake felt uncomfortable. He had never wanted to be famous. He had just done what felt right. There's something else, Brooks added. The Queen wants to see you. Personally. As soon as you're able to walk. 2 days later, Jake was escorted to the royal palace. His wounds had fully healed, though his mind was still trying to process everything that had happened. He wore a fresh uniform, and 2 Velkari guards walked beside him, their compound eyes watching him with what might have been curiosity. The palace looked different now. The damage from the attack had been repaired so perfectly that Jake could not tell where the explosions had happened. It was as if that terrible day had never occurred. He was led to a private chamber, smaller than the grand hall but still impressive. Crystals of every color covered the walls, and soft light filled the space. In the center of the room, Queen Zithra Ven waited. She looked healthier than before. Her purple shell gleamed, and her golden eyes were sharp and alert. She sat on a simple chair rather than a throne, and she gestured for Jake to sit across from her. Lieutenant Jake Morrison, she said through her translator. The human who would not run. Jake sat down, feeling awkward and underdressed for such a meeting. Your Majesty, I'm glad to see you recovered, because of you. The Queen leaned forward slightly. I have ruled this empire for 300 years. In that time, I have met thousands of beings, from hundreds of species. Not one of them has ever done what you did. Jake did not know what to say, so he stayed silent. Let me explain something about the Velkari, the Queen continued. We evolved from predators. Survival was our highest priority. We learned that those who took unnecessary risks died young. Those who were careful lived long enough to reproduce. Over millions of years, this shaped our minds. We became logical, efficient. We do not take actions that might harm ourselves unless the benefit clearly outweighs the cost. She paused, her eyes fixed on Jake's face. What you did had no logical benefit. You risked death to save a stranger from another species. There was no reward waiting for you. No guarantee of success. By every calculation, you should have run like everyone else. Jake finally found his voice. With respect, Your Majesty, I didn't calculate anything. I saw someone who needed help, so I helped. But why? The Queen's voice was intense now, filled with something that might have been frustration or fascination. Why would you suffer for someone you do not know? Jake thought about the question seriously. It was something he had never really considered before. Helping others was just what you did. It was what his parents had taught him. It was what made life worth living. Because life is not just about survival, he said finally. It's about the connections we make with others. It's about leaving the world better than we found it. If I had run away and let you die, I would have survived. But I wouldn't have been able to live with myself. The queen was silent for a long time. Her compound eyes reflected Jake's image back at him 1,000 times. Among my people, she said slowly, the greatest warriors are chosen as royal consorts. They are selected based on their bravery in battle, their willingness to face death without fear. Jake nodded, not sure where this was going. In 10,000 years of Velkhari history, no warrior has ever displayed the kind of courage you showed that day. You did not just face death, you chose it. You embraced suffering to protect another being. That is something my people have never understood. She stood, and Jake quickly stood as well. Lieutenant Morrison, you have taught me something that 300 years of rule could not. You have shown me that there are things more valuable than survival, more valuable than logic. Her golden eyes met his. You have shown me what it truly means to be brave. The news spread across the Velkhari Empire like fire through dry grass. Queen Zythraven had announced her intention to offer a royal bonding proposal to the human lieutenant who had saved her life. It was the biggest scandal in 1,000 years. Jake stood in his quarters aboard the Starboard Hope, staring at the wall. His mind could not process what had happened. A marriage proposal. From an alien queen. To him. Amy sat on his bed, watching him pace back and forth. Jake, you need to sit down. You're going to wear a hole in the floor. She proposed to me, Jake said for the 20th time. The queen of an empire that spans 100 worlds asked me to be her. What did she call it? Royal consort? It's a big deal. Amy agreed. But Jake, you don't have to say yes. This is your choice. Jake stopped pacing. Is it? If I say no, what happens to the relationship between Earth and the Velkhari? We came here to build an alliance. How do I reject their queen without destroying everything we worked for? The door opened, and Commander Brooks entered without knocking. His face was serious, more serious than Jake had ever seen it. Morrison, Captain Hayes wants to see you. Now. Jake followed Brooks to the captain's ready room. Captain Hayes sat behind her desk, looking like she had not slept in days. Next to her stood a holographic display showing a man Jake recognized as Admiral Peterson, the head of Earth's space fleet. Lieutenant Morrison, the Admiral said, I've been briefed on your situation. This is unprecedented. There's no protocol for this. No training manual. I understand, sir, Jake said. Do you? The Admiral leaned forward. Son, if you accept this proposal, you become the most important human in the galaxy. You'll be tied to the Velkhari Empire forever. Every decision you make will affect billions of lives. Captain Hayes spoke softly. Jake, no one is going to force you to do anything. This is your life. But I need you to understand the stakes. An alliance with the Velkhari would protect Earth for generations. Their technology, their military power, their resources. We would go from being a small, vulnerable species to having the most powerful ally in known space. Jake felt the weight of her words pressing down on him. How was he supposed to make a decision like this? He was just a lieutenant. Just a regular guy who had done what anyone should have done. What about the Velkhari High Council? Jake asked. They can't be happy about this. They're furious, Brooks answered. Half of them think it's an insult to their entire species. The other half are terrified of what the Queen might do if they oppose her. There's talk of rebellion in some of the outer territories. Great, Jake muttered. So no matter what I do, someone's going to be angry. The Admiral's hologram flickered. Morrison, I'm not going to order you to accept this proposal. Frankly, I don't have the authority to order someone to get married. But I'm asking you to think carefully about what this could mean for humanity. After the meeting, Jake found himself walking through the palace gardens. The Queen had given him permission to explore the grounds while he considered her offer. It was beautiful here. Strange plants with silver leaves grew in perfect patterns. Fountains sprayed water that glowed with soft light. Insects that looked like living jewels flew through the air. He found a bench and sat down, his head in his hands. "You seem troubled." Jake looked up. Queen Zithraven stood a few feet away, her golden eyes watching him. She was alone, without guards or advisors, just her and him. "Your Majesty." Jake started to stand, but she gestured for him to remain seated. "Please. I did not come here as your queen. I came as— I am not sure what word to use. A friend. Perhaps. If humans and Velkari can be friends." She sat beside him on the bench. Up close, Jake could see details he had missed before. The patterns on her shell were not random. They told stories, histories carved into her very body. "I understand this is difficult for you," she said. "My proposal has caused you pain. That was not my intention." "Tom, why me?" Jake asked. "You must have thousands of Velkari warriors who would give anything to be your consort. Why choose an alien?" Zithraven was quiet for a moment. "Because none of them have what you have. They would fight for glory. They would die for honor. But they would not suffer for a stranger. They cannot. It is not in their nature." She turned to face him fully. "When I was trapped under that pillar, I felt something I had never felt before. Fear, yes, but also loneliness. I realized that in 300 years of rule, no one had ever truly cared whether I lived or died. They cared about the crown, the power, the empire, but not about me." Her voice softened. "And then you came. A creature from a species I had never met. You put yourself between me and death. You bled for me. You nearly died for me. Not for my crown, not for my power, for me." Jake felt something shift inside him. He looked at the queen, really looked at her. Behind those golden eyes, he saw the same thing he had seen in the eyes of soldiers who had been fighting alone for too long. Exhaustion, isolation. A desperate need to be seen as more than just a symbol. "Your Majesty," he said slowly. "Zithraven, if I accept your proposal, it can't be as a pet or a trophy. I need to be your equal, your partner, someone who can tell you when you're wrong and support you when you're right." The queen made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You would dare to tell a queen she is wrong? If she's wrong, yes." Zithraven's eyes gleamed. "Lieutenant Morrison, you continue to surprise me. Perhaps that is why I find you so fascinating." She stood and extended one of her upper limbs toward him. It was a gesture he had seen Velkari use with those they respected. "I accept your condition," she said. "If you accept my proposal, you will stand beside me as an equal. Not a servant, not a symbol, a true partner." Jake looked at her hand. He thought about Earth. He thought about humanity. He thought about his own future, stretched out before him like a map to unknown territory. Then he reached out and took her hand. "I accept." The bonding ceremony was scheduled for the first day of the Velkari New Year. Representatives from every corner of the Empire traveled to the homeworld to witness history. Species who had never cared about humans suddenly found themselves very interested in the small creatures from the distant spiral arm. Jake spent the weeks before the ceremony learning everything he could about Velkari customs. He studied their language, their history, their beliefs. He practiced rituals until his body ached. He memorized names and titles until his head spun. Amy helped him whenever she could. "You're going to be fine," she told him one evening, as he struggled with a particularly complicated ceremonial gesture. "You've already done the hard part. You saved the Queen's life. Everything else is just details. Details that could start a war if I get them wrong," Jake replied. "Then don't get them wrong." Jake laughed, despite his nerves. He was grateful for Amy's friendship. She was the only person who still treated him like a normal human being. Everyone else looked at him like he was something special, something different. But Amy still called him an idiot when he deserved it. The day of the ceremony arrived faster than Jake expected. He woke before dawn and dressed in the ceremonial robes that had been made for him. They were Valkyrie in design, but adapted for a human body. Deep purple fabric with silver threads that caught the light. A cape that flowed behind him like water. A circlet of crystal that rested on his forehead. When he looked in the mirror, he barely recognized himself. Commander Brooks came to escort him to the ceremony. The older man looked at Jake with something like pride in his eyes. "You know," Brooks said as they walked, "when you first joined my team, I thought you were just another soldier. Average skills, average ambition, average everything. Thanks, sir," Jake said dryly. "Let me finish. I was wrong. You have something that can't be taught or trained. Something that most people never develop." Brooks stopped walking and turned to face Jake. "You have heart, Morrison. Real heart. The Queen saw it. The galaxy is about to see it. Don't ever lose it." The ceremony was held in the Grand Chamber, where Jake had first saved the Queen. It had been transformed for the occasion. Flowers from 100 worlds covered every surface. Light from crystals painted rainbows across the walls. Music played from instruments Jake had never seen before, creating sounds that were strange and beautiful. Thousands of beings filled the chamber. Valkyrie nobles stood in perfect rows, their shells polished until they gleamed. Representatives from other species watched from special platforms, their eyes wide with curiosity. And in the front, arranged in a small section reserved just for them, stood the crew of the Starward Hope. Jake walked down the central aisle, trying to keep his steps steady. His heart was pounding so hard, he was sure everyone could hear it. But he kept his head high and his eyes forward. Queen Zithraven waited for him at the end of the aisle. She was magnificent. Her shell had been decorated with patterns of gold and silver that told the story of her reign. Jewels hung from her limbs, catching the light with every movement. Her golden eyes found Jake's face and did not look away. The ceremony itself was a blur. Jake spoke words in the Valkyrie language, his pronunciation far from perfect, but sincere. Zithraven responded with words in English, her translator giving them a strange but touching quality. They exchanged gifts, made promises, and performed rituals that had been practiced for thousands of years. But the moment that mattered most came at the very end. It was time for Jake to address the gathered representatives. The entire ceremony stopped as he stepped forward to speak. His words would be broadcast across 100 worlds. Millions of beings would hear what he said. Jake looked out at the sea of faces, some human, most not. He thought about everything that had brought him to this moment. The fear, the pain, the doubt, but also the hope, the connection, the love he had discovered. He began to speak. "I am not a diplomat or a politician. I am not a hero, despite what some people have called me. I am just a man who did what he believed was right." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "Humans are a young species. We have only been traveling among the stars for a short time. We do not have ancient wisdom or advanced technology. We cannot offer much compared to the great empires of the galaxy." His voice grew stronger. "But we can offer something that we believe has value. We can offer our courage, our loyalty, our willingness to stand with our friends, even when standing means suffering, even when standing means death." He turned to look at Zithraven. "I did not save the Queen because I wanted power or reward. I saved her because she needed help, and I could give it. That is what humans do. We help those who need helping. We fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. We love with all our hearts, even when love makes no logical sense." He faced the crowd again. "Today, I join my life with the Queen of the Valkyrie Empire, but I also join humanity's future with yours. We ask for your friendship, your trust, and in return, we promise to stand with you against any threat. Just as I stood for the Queen, humanity will stand for its allies." He raised his voice for the final words. "Those who underestimate humans do so at their peril. We may be small, but we are fierce. We may be young, but we are brave. And we never, ever give up on the people we love. The chamber erupted in sound. Cheers, clicking, roars, and 100 other expressions of approval filled the air. Jake felt Zithraven's hand take his, and he turned to find her watching him with those golden eyes. "Well spoken," she said. "Perhaps I chose my partner well." "Perhaps you did," Jake replied with a smile. As the celebration began around them, Jake looked out at the crowd of beings from across the galaxy. He saw Amy crying happy tears. He saw Commander Brooks nodding with approval. He saw creatures he did not recognize watching humanity with new respect. This was not how he had expected his life to turn out. A year ago, he was just a lieutenant doing his job. Now he was standing beside a queen, helping to shape the future of the galaxy. But some things had not changed. He was still the same man who had run toward danger instead of away from it. Still the same man who believed that doing the right thing was worth any cost. And standing there, holding the hand of the alien queen who had chosen him above all others, Jake Morrison knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them the same way he had faced everything else. With courage, with heart, and without regret.